Shooting! So at the moment, I've got a player and I can move around the screen by pressing left and right and forward and back, and I can look around. I've also got a coin in the distance where when I collect it or bump into it, it disappears and my score goes up. And I've also got an enemy, which is randomly movement. But my enemy doesn't do anything to me and I can't do anything to it either. So we are going to add something to our game so we're able to shoot it and our point goes up then. So let me just press escape to get off the game. And the first thing we're going to do is add a gun to our character. Now I could potentially just have the bullet coming straight from my main character, my player, but I kind of want to have something on the side so you can see the bullet coming out of it or the rocket or whatever it might be. So the way I'm going to do that is simply add in a 3D object and I'm going to add a cylinder. Now I am going to pause this a minute because the cylinder, and I'm going to just call it gun, so I've got a name for it. It is a pain in the bum to rotate it around and to scale it down and to get it so it's actually positioned on the side of the player. And it might take me a couple of minutes to do it. So just bear with me a second. So there it is. I've got it on the side of the player and I can double check if it's in the right position by clicking on the Y and the X and so on to see what it looks like from different positions. Now, the gun itself, if I press play and start running around, it will just stay hanging there because it's not attached to my player at all, apart from physically, of course. So where I've got gun across here, I do need to actually drag and drop that into player and it drops it on there for me. Now, I'm going to add a bit of script. There's a bit of code to my gun to basically say that this is where the bullet will get shot from. It gets shot in this direction and it gets shot at this speed. So I'm going to add a component to the gun, which is called shooting. As you can see, I've already got it typed in, which is going to be a new script, and it will appear down here. So when I double click on it, it should open up in Visual Studio for us. And the code I'm going to take is this code here. So I've already got it copied. Just want to make sure I've got it copied actually. And I'll paste it in when it loads up eventually. There it is. I'm just going to paste over what's already here. I'm going to save it. Go back to Unity so it can do its processing, and I'll just come back onto Visual Studio to explain it. So the idea is I'm basically going to be saying I'm going to be shooting this object here, a bullet prefab, which we haven't made, yeah? We're going to be shooting it from a specific point, which again we haven't made, but we're going to be shooting it at this speed. So when we press fire 1 on our mouse, and that's basically the left mouse button, then it's going to instigate this code here, which is shoot, which basically means bring the bullet up onto the screen, send it off in this direction at that particular speed. Okay, so it's going in a forward direction then. So if we go back onto Unity, that's all processed fine, and we've got our gun, and if I press play, I can start to run around when it loads up. And hopefully our gun will stay attached to us. And I'm doing this just to make sure that, yes, the gun is, I can see the end of the gun, the front of the gun. So as I'm moving around and turning, it is following with us. Now, if I press left click, then nothing happens. You probably noticed down in the bottom left-hand corner, we have an error message saying, well, what do you want us to shoot? Because you haven't actually told us what you want us to shoot. So if I click on it, you can see it's missing this fire point. So where's it going to appear from the gun, and what is this bullet prefab? So the first thing I'm going to do is actually add an empty, so create an empty, and I'm not sure where that's appeared now. If I click on move, and this will be where our bullet will appear from. So as you can see at this point in time, it is nowhere near our player. It's all the way over here. So I'm going to move it across, and if I click on Z, move it that way. If I look on Y, I can see that it's kind of in the right position, and I'm going to need to take it right the way down as well. So I'll go back to my X. So again, this is like the messing around I was doing earlier with the cylinder getting in the right position. But the idea is I should have a firing point, which is at the front of our gun. So it's kind of at that point there. So I'm going to call it firing point as well. I don't know why I double clicked on it. Up here, just so for our own kind of like, so we know what it is. And I'm also going to drag and drop that onto the player, so it follows the gun round, it follows me around as well. Right, next thing, we need to make a bullet. So we're going to add a bullet by just simply adding a 3D object, and I'm just going to do a sphere, and I'm just going to resize it. So it's 0.25, so it looks kind of like it's coming out of the right, because that's the size I had my cylinder as in terms of the kind of thickness of it. Now, I don't need to worry about where this is going to go. I can add a color to it if I want, but I'm just going to keep it as it is for the time being, and I'm going to call it bullet. So if I double click on that, change it to bullet, and I think I need to add a rigid body to it. So let me just see if I can do that. So rigid body here. I don't think, yeah, I'll keep gravity on actually, because I want to show you what happens when you keep the gravity on. And the issue is, I'm going to make something called a prefab. So where I've got this bullet on the screen here, if I can't just have a bullet floating around waiting for me to press fire 1, which is left mouse button. We're going to have to basically have this in a bank down at the bottom. So I'm going to drag and drop it down to here. And what that does, when it turns blue like this and it's blue like that, it makes a bullet prefab. So I can get rid of the bullet, which is now on the scene. And what that means is, it means basically then every time I press fire, that bullet should appear on screen. So let's just see what happens, right? Because I won't actually, I just realized. So the actual cylinder itself, our gun, we haven't actually dragged these things across here, have we? So a bullet prefab, so that was that bit here. I'm going to drag up into that position. And our firing point goes there. And hopefully now when I press play, it will shoot a bullet going forward at 20 speeds. There we go. So at the moment, it's kind of bouncing around all over the place because I think it's actually hitting the mountain and so on. And it's bouncing off the terrain. Okay, so it's a little bit kind of all over the place. But the issue is, I can't actually kill that there. And I don't know whether or not, I don't know, maybe it's because the gun in itself is a little bit too close to my player, potentially. So I might have to have a mess around with that. One thing I need to fix with it, as you can see, there's loads of bullets all over the place at the moment, so they don't disappear until I've coded it. But I think maybe my firing point is kind of maybe a little bit too close to this. Let's just pull it out to there. Oh, what's going on? That's not supposed to happen. So I'm kind of like trying to fix problems here, but I don't know if it's going to work that way. Let's try to see if that works. So I don't want my bullet to be bouncing everywhere. Now, I remember I did kind of have use gravity as ticked. So what I should have done possibly. Oh my God, what am I doing? Ah, there we go, that's a bit better. So it's actually kind of shooting away. I think it's because it was too close to the player itself. But you can see I'm basically throwing snowballs at the sheep and nothing's happening. So it's not dying at all. So let's fix that in. So I know I can shoot now. And I think if I go onto my bullet prefab, I'm not sure if I can actually come in here and change anything. So I might have to go through that process again. So if I delete the bullet here, the prefab, make another bullet, make sure I haven't got use gravity ticked, and then I just basically do the same thing I've done over the last 2 minutes. But more importantly at this point, I want to make it so that my enemy, my sheep, dies when I hit it. And just want to check something here a moment. I need to make sure that the enemy itself has this code added to it. So it's going to be shoot cow. Why have I called it shoot cow there? I'm going to change that and make sure it's facing the direction but it's to shoot, add a collide, it's the enemy. Right, and let me change. Okay, so on my sheep, there he is. I'm going to add some code, which is going to be shoot sheep. And we're going to let that make itself down here. And once I get shoot sheep loaded up, which it is about to do for us in Visual Studio, we're going to paste that code in. When it loads, there it is. So I've got it copied already, the code, so I'm going to paste it into there. I just need to change the name of this so it says shoot sheep, because otherwise it won't recognize it. And I do need, and what this is basically saying is when an object called rocket hits me, it will destroy the object, but it will also destroy the enemy or the sheep, then that will disappear as well. So if I save that and I go back onto Unity, so there shouldn't be any errors with the code, but there are a couple of things I need to do first of all. So my bullet, I need to make sure it's got a tag on it called rocket. I'm hoping I can do that from here, otherwise I've got to start this video again. So if I click on it here, I click on open prefab. Right, so I can click on open prefab and untick use gravity here. Now, where the tag is, I said this has got to have rocket on it, so I can call it whatever I want really. But if I go to add tag, and I add a new one called, I can call it what I want. I can just change the code, but I'll just stick with what it says, rocket. And I click back on it. I make sure it says rocket. And you might have noticed then in the drop-down list, I've already got enemy set up. So all I need to do is go back onto my scene. So if I just save the prefab and I click on my sheep, I'm going to make sure it's the whole sheep I'm looking at. And I'm going to make sure that it's tagged as enemy. And the only other thing I need to do, it has got a box collider on there. Do I need to tick this trigger? Should we find out? If I press play, we'll see what happens. So this is the enemy. If it gets hit by a rocket, which is our bullet, it should disappear. And our rocket should also disappear as well, or our ball should disappear. And if it doesn't, I just might have to come back and tick that box there for its trigger. So I can shoot. That's working fine. Where is he? It's over this way. Let me get a little bit closer so we can kind of have a good shot at him. And it disappeared. Ta-da! So basically that's how you shoot things. So the code which I used, you can adapt that, and I'll probably be in the next video to say this is how you get your score to go up as a result of shooting an enemy and making it disappear like we just did.